money, as you say.
said at the beginning of your speech that the Republicans are going to have all the money they need.
They're going to have all the money they need. Because first of all, they're Republicans. Okay, so they have, you know, a lot more sort of Koch brother-esque people on their side. And the Koch brothers, by the way, have committed $400 million to keep the Congress Republican, which means if there's 40 competitive races at the end of the cycle, that's $10 million a race. The Koch brothers are going to put $10 million in my race, which of course I'm sure will all be charming information about me. Just to get it on the record, I never shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. I don't care what the ads say.
I'm confused about these rules because you're talking about the limits that you can raise per individual.
Super PAC. So the theory of the super PAC is that the super PAC, you can give unlimited money. We can't coordinate. Okay. Now even that's sort of a joke.
You can't ask them.
I can't ask the super PAC to do anything. I can't tell them, you know, I could really use an ad on my education plan. I can't do anything like that. What I can do, because there's all kinds of ways around these rules. I'll give you two real quick ones. They're funny. One is, so for example, I can't say, I could use an ad talking about X. I can't go call a super PAC and say that. That's illegal. I can tweet that. It would be nice if someone would run an ad about X, and they can read Twitter, and if they happen to do it, they do it. There's something else that Mitch McConnell perfected. So I can't film a commercial with a super PAC. Like I can't show up and film a commercial. It's coordinating. But so what Mitch McConnell did was he put a whole bunch of stuff online on YouTube, silent video of him sitting at his desk smiling, talking to a senior citizen, walking through a factory, pointing at things as if he was interested in what he was looking at. He just put like an hour and a half of just like random video, and like people are like, why? Because it's public domain, and the super PAC can take that random footage and put it in the commercial, and it looks just like Mitch McConnell filmed the commercial for it. So we have a terrible campaign finance system. I'll tell you what I think we need. We need public financing of campaigns. Some people are like, why should we spend money on politicians' ads? I promise you, because I've seen it firsthand, you will save so much money on subsidies that we don't vote for, tax breaks we don't vote for, to pay off big donors. One quick story: when I was in the House, there was a bill that came up and we're running, and it was a bill to exempt car washes from sales tax. And I was talking to the guy next to me, and I'm like, his name was Bob. I'm like, Bob, what's this about? Do we have a car wash crisis in Pennsylvania that I'm unaware of? And he said, no, this is the sponsor of the bill has a big car wash owner in his district. He gave him a lot of money, so he's running this bill. Now, fortunately, it didn't get through the Senate, but we do, I mean, half the budget is like paying off people who give us money. If they couldn't give us money anymore, the legislature would not feel compelled to pay them off. It would be billions of dollars at the national level that you would save. And other countries get this, but of course, raising money is a huge thing, and that's you have to play by the rules as they are. So I spend all day on the phone telling people how wonderful I am, and asking them to make outrageous, financially crippling donations to my campaign. Yes.
Hi. I'm a true supporter of what you do.
Thank you.
And of your beliefs. Some of us are a little concerned that you are so progressive that you may be too progressive to get elected. So how do you expect to deal with that?
That's a fair question. I say several things. First of all, I actually, if you poll, let's take the label away for a second. If you poll the actual issues that I talk about, the economic issues, social issues, the American people agree with me on, and the people of the 7th District agree with me on almost all of them. Okay? Now, some of them have been scared by the word liberal or progressive because they, Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity told them it was bad. But on the individual issues, so I feel like we got to get past the label and talk about individual issues, and I'm going to really make an effort to do that. But there's also another theory I have. We're testing theories this year. There is one model of Democratic campaigning, which is this. Here is the Republican, ideologically, right? I'm going to be here, and therefore I'll get all these votes. And essentially, like John Ossoff, who just ran in Georgia, he essentially became a pro-choice Republican. Okay, he was pro-choice, but like promised never to vote for single-payer health care, promised never to vote for revenues, never mentioned Donald Trump the last 6 weeks of the campaign. And essentially he became his opponent, except pro-choice. And it is, to me, it is a failed model. I think a clear choice is a better model. It motivates your people, and it actually gives independents a sense that there'll actually be a difference in my life if I vote. Now, some might say it's a bad difference, but there'll be a difference in my life if I vote for this guy versus this guy. And again, if Pat Meehan is an affable guy, they don't want to fire him because he's a bad guy. And if all I am is this much different than him, then why would they fire him? He's nice enough. He comes to the Little League game. He smiles. He waves. What's wrong? You know. So there has to be a clear choice. That is why we saw a lot of people who were both Donald Trump supporters, but before that they were Bernie Sanders supporters. Why? Even though they're totally opposite ends ideologically. Well, to the extent Trump has an ideology, but the people he hires certainly do. It's because they both were perceived as authentic and passionate and really fighting for you. If someone is like, and that's one of Pat Meehan's problems. He's again nice guy, but he sort of splits the baby on everything. He voted for the health care bill in committee when they needed him, and voted against it on the floor. Said he disappointed Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement, even though he doesn't support the Paris Agreement. He said he didn't vote for Trump. He wrote in Mike Pence, which is odd. But it's always like, please don't be mad at me, anybody. And I want to you'll know where I stand. You may not agree with me all the time, and I like what Ed Koch said about that, which is like, if you agree with me 75% of the time, vote for me. If you agree with me 100% of the time, see a psychiatrist. But it's not. But I don't think people are looking for someone who's going to agree with them 100% of the time. I think persuadable voters are looking for someone, even if I'm against you, if I'm fighting hard, you know that when I'm for you, I'll be fighting hard. If I'm just mamby-pamby and say nothing and try to hide, how good of an ally am I going to be, even when I'm for you? So that's my theory. And I'm sure they're going to say, oh, he's a liberal. Well, I'll say he's a communist. And every Democrat who runs, they say that, frankly. There's very little I could do to avoid that. There's also going to be apparently the ad where my face morphs with Osama bin Laden's at some point. If we're afraid of that, if we're afraid to run as Democrats because someone's going to call us a liberal or something, then we're never going to. I think one of the, we used to have when Franklin Roosevelt was president. Remember what he said? He said at the time, the people who didn't like the New Deal hate me, and I revel in their hatred. And what he meant was, you know where I stand, and we had all the white working class voters. We had all these people we lost to Trump last time were Roosevelt voters and Truman voters and Kennedy and Johnson. And then we became more of a corporate party, and we stopped. The era of big government is over, and we're never going to vote for any social programs, and we're not going to be. And then eventually, the distinctions between the parties went away in people's minds in terms of the economic fortunes of their families. And so all that was left was like, who's going to take your gun, or who's going to make you marry a gay guy, And so people started voting on that and stopped voting. Why do people? We hear this all the time. Why do people vote against their self-interest? I think a big reason is because they don't perceive that it's in their self-interest, and because we have stopped making the case that we're fighting for them. I'm going to make it clear I'm fighting for people, and I'll be attacked for it. But I'd rather lose that way than pretend that I'm this. And I actually don't think this is good politics. I will tell you, I do very well in my district. I outperform Obama. I outperform, and I get a lot of votes from very conservative Republicans. When we're in orientation, first elected, they tell you, if someone writes an email to you saying, I disagree with you, you're a bum, you're supposed to write back and say, thank you very much for your input. We will certainly take it into consideration. And I'm like, That's not how I operate, and I never have, much to my staff's mortification sometimes, because, I'll be like, screw me, screw you, but I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I don't agree with you at all, but I really respect the fact that you engaged with me in an honest way, and that you told me what you really think, and we get a lot of support from very right-wing Republicans in my district, because I think people as human beings are sort of hungry for there's no real interactions anymore. We're all on our phones, and we're all, when you call someone, if you are having a stroke, press 2, And, people want actual human interactions, I think, even if they disagree. So that's my theory. If I lose 92-8, I'll know it was a bad theory. But I think that's the only way I can run. I can't run any other way. Yes.
There are a handful of people who throw their hats in the ring for the Democratic, candidate. Can you compare and contrast yourself with the other?
They're all horrible. Yeah. Well, I would say this. I'd say a couple things. I know some will say career politician. I wasn't actually in politics as a career until I was almost 40. I did other things. But putting that aside, I am not a fan of electing people to high office who have no experience. I know that was a big thing for a while. Donald Trump is the manifestation of that. Okay? I actually think, no one would say, I'm getting brain surgery. Look, I don't want a professional brain surgeon. What I want is someone who dabbles in it from time to time, okay? I think I am such a better legislator now than I was when I was first elected, because I learned things, okay? And I think that as a legislator, experience really helps, but even before that, because you can't be a legislator unless you win an election. I think as a candidate, I have been through probably 8 tough, competitive, well-funded opponent elections. Someone who's 30 years old and has never run for anything before, I don't think they should start with U.S. Congress. Okay, run for state rep, run for school board, run for city council, run for, and learn something, and then run for something else, and then, build a career. Someone who's never run for Congress before, I can tell you, has no idea what's involved in this. It is such an all-consuming endeavor. And we don't want a candidate who shows up against Pat Meehan and is not prepared for what's coming. Number one. Number two, I think that just in terms of comparing candidates, and I have no personal animosity towards any candidate. I haven't met them all, or I think I may have met them all once, but they seem like nice enough people. That's fine. But I just, I think I put it this way. When you're asked, what do you want in a politician? I think most people would say someone who's not going to pander, someone who's going to take tough positions, someone who's going to do the right thing even when it's hard, someone with a record of achievement, and someone with the skill to be creative and get things done, and someone who's in it for because they care about issues deeply. They want to do something rather than be something. Again, I have to embrace this, but without trying to sound conceited, I don't know what else I could have done in the last 15 years. If those are the things that are important to you, what else could I have done? And so if we think those are good virtues, I think I've demonstrated them in a real world sense, not in a theoretical, I'm 30 years old, but when I get there, the whole world's going to change. I think that is a noble thing to think. I just think that the reality of the world is a little bit different, and I am not as young as I look, and I've been through a lot of things for the entirety of my life, and I think that's of value. Also, I think most of them are not running as progressives. Some of them are adopting this theory, and I don't think that's going to work this time. Yeah.
So since it is quite likely we're going to be in the minority in the House of Representatives, maybe you can talk about how your success and or difficulties in passing legislation while you've been in the minority in the legislature.
Yes, I will.